Hi, welcome to our new course of Master in Burp Bug Bounty Web Security and Hacking. Burp is one of the best web application security framework. This course is all about doing manual security testing of various web application and bug bounty programs. So in this course, I am going to teach you how we can do SQL injection, how we can do cross-site scripting and so on. And I'm also going to teach you that how we can use the fantastic framework that is Burp in order to manual security testing. So this is totally hands-on course, and this course is essential for penetration tester, bug bounty hunter and ethical hacker. In this course, I have covered web application security testing and kind of vulnerabilities are present in today's web application. Let's talk about what we will learn in this course. Starting, we will talk about that what is Burp, how we can use it, how we can configure it, and what are the features of Burp. Then we will see that how we can use proxy tab of worksheet, how we can create a sitemap, and how we can use spiders, and then we will talk about that how we can use automatic scanner feature of Burp, which will automatically scan all the vulnerable web application, and we will try to find out what abilities, and one of the most important thing of Burp is intruder tab. So with the help of intruder function in Burp, we can send multiple HTTP requests with the different payloads. Next, we will talk about Burp repeater, in which we will see that how we can send multiple HTTP requests, and in order to sending of that multiple HTTP requests, we will see that what kind of response we got from the server. Decoder tab, in order to see that how we can convert strings into base 64, how we can convert strings into hashes. Okay, last but not least, we will demonstrate top 10 vulnerabilities with Burp, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, broken authentication and session management, insecure direct object references, security misconfiguration, and so on. Welcome to our video. In this video lecture, we will learn how to download and install the Burp. Before going to start, software requirements for Burp. First one is Oracle Java. It is required because Burp is developed with Java. Here I am already installed Java latest version. You can download at java.com/en/download. Burp community or professional and last browser. Let's open up browser. Type portsfigure.net. Portsfigure.net is the Burp official website. Click on Burp. You will need to decide which edition of the Burp you would like to download. There are 3 versions like Enterprise, Professional and Community. Let's see both Community and Professional editions. The community version offers many of the functions used for bug bounty program, but not all. Community does not include any scanning functionality. Community version contains some forced strangle of threads, which using the intruder functionality. There are no built-in payloads in the community version, though you can load your own custom ones. Several Burp extensions that require professional versions not work in the community edition. The professional version has all the functionalities enabled, including passive and active scanners. There is no forced strangle. Portsfigure provides several built-in payloads for fuzzing and brute forcing. Burp extensions using scanner-related API calls are workable in the professional version as well. The professional edition costs $3.99 and community edition is free. I personally recommend you to buy Professional Edition. If you are beginner, then choose the Community Edition with the product prior to purchasing. For the Professional Edition, you will need to complete the forms or payments, and subsequent email confirmations will be sent to you. Once your account is created, you may log in and perform the download from the links provided in your account. In this lecture, I am installing Community Edition. Here you can see that two installation options, including an executable and a plain jar file. The executable file is only available in Windows and is offered in both 32-bit and 64-bit. The plain jar file is available for Windows, Mac OS and Linux. Here I am already downloaded and installed executable Burp. You can also run Burp suite with jar file. Double click on it. Here you will see that Burp suite is started. Okay, that's it in this video lecture. Thank you for watching. See you in next lecture. Welcome again. In this lecture, we will learn how to install OWASP Broken Web Application project installation. The Broken Web Application, called BWA project, produces a virtual machine running a variety of applications which known vulnerabilities for those interested in learning about web application security, testing manual assessment techniques, testing automated tools, testing source code analysis tools, observing web attacks, testing of BAFS and similar code technologies. OWASP Broken Web Application, in order to install, we have to search it as OWASP Broken Web Application project. Let me open it up, and you can see over here OWASP official website. Now click on download button. Now click on download the latest link. Downloading is started. You must have VirtualBox so that you can install OS Broken Web Application inside it, so you can download VirtualBox from their official website. VirtualBox. We have to make a new virtual machine, or we have to make a new operating system, but it's a little tricky thing in this OWASP Broken Web Application. We don't have to make a new virtual machine, so the reason behind is this OWASP Broken Web Application file is actually an operating system itself. So what we have to do is we have to just download it, and then we just have to import it in our VirtualBox. You can see over here that I have downloaded OWASP Broken Web Application file and extracted here. It's just near about, I think, 2.6 GB. Let's run the Broken Web Application. Simply click on Virtual Machine File, Broken Web Application, and this operating system is actually Ubuntu 32-bit. Now here you can see that it is started importing the operating system in a VirtualBox. So we have to wait for a time being. Okay, so you can see over here that we have successfully imported broken web application. Now let's log in with username as root and password as OWASP BWA. You all know that this OWASP broken web application contains a lot of vulnerable web application, so they have recommended to not put this operating system on a bridge mode. They have recommended to put this system on network, but because of my internet connectivity, I have did so. So it's all about your internet connection. You can actually set that operating system on that particular network. You can see over here. Let's find out its IP address. The IP address is 192.168.24.135. Now let me open my browser and now let's just type this IP address. That is 192.168.24.135, and you can see over here that we are on OWASP Broken Web Application homepage. You can see here Web Application Project, and if I scroll down, you will see various web applications and all of them are vulnerable, which we can use for doing manual security testing. You can access all the web apps such as WebGoat, Mutility, etc. OWASP WebGoat to see common web application flaws, Bricks to see variations of commonly seen web application, security vulnerabilities, and exploits. BWAP covers all major known web bugs. DVWA to see web application security. Okay, that's it in this video lecture. Thanks for watching and see you in next lecture. Welcome back. In this video lecture we will see that how to install custom Linux virtual machine pre-installed with BWAP. BWAP, its full form as a bug web application, is a free and open source deliberately insecure web application. It helps security enthusiasts, developers and students to discover and to prevent web vulnerabilities. BWAP prepares one to conduct successful penetration testing and ethical hacking projects. It covers all major known web bugs, including all risks from the top 10 project. Windows with IIS and MySQL with XAMPP using BBox, a custom Linux virtual machine pre-installed with BWAP. Now let's install custom Linux virtual machine pre-installed with BWAP. Open up browser to download BWAP. Search BBox download. Click on the sourceforge.net to download. And now click on BBox version 1.6.7. It will automatically download in browser. Select download folder as download. Click on OK. Downloading is started now. BWAP is developed by IT Sec Games. Here you get all the information about BWAP. Now BBox is downloaded and extract the RAR file. BBox is extracted here. Now open up BBox folder. Here you can see that BBox VMware virtual machine file. I have already installed VMware Workstation 12 player. Double click on it. Here you can see that BBox is running on virtual machine As I already said, BWAP is a custom Linux VM pre-installed, means virtual pre-installed. Now BBox is running in VMware. Open up terminal, tap ifconfig to see the virtual machine IP address to access the BWAP web application. IP address is 192.168.1.106. Copied it. Back to my Windows browser, paste the copied IP address and hit enter. Here you can see that it's running here. Now click on BWAP. By default, BWAP username as B and password as bug. Here you can see that portal is open. In the drop-down menu, lots of bug pages are available using this. You can practice your bug programs like SQL injection, cross-site scripts, and many more. And you can also set for security checks low, medium, high. In the home page, you also create new user. Okay, that's all about BWAP installation. In the next upcoming videos, we will learn top 10 vulnerabilities with this web application. That's all about BWAP installation. Thanks for watching. Welcome to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about types of bug bounty program. There are two different types in bug bounty programs based on their participation. So, two kinds of bug bounty program: public programs and private program. So, let's discuss one by one. Public bug bounty program. A public bug bounty program is one that is open to anyone who wants to participate. This program may restrict some researchers from participating based on the researcher's level and track record. But in general, anyone can participate in a public bug bounty program. This includes the scope, the rules of engagement, as well as the bug bounty guidelines. A public program is accessible with all researchers on the platform, and all bug bounty programs outside the platforms are also considered bug bounty programs. Private bug bounty program. A private bug bounty program is one that is an invite-only program for selected researchers. This is a program that allows only a few researchers to participate, and the researchers are invited based on their skills level. Private programs only select those researchers who are skilled in testing the kinds of applications. These programs provide access only to those researchers that have a strong track record of reporting good vulnerabilities. So, to be invited to good programs, it is required to have a strong and positive record. Okay, there are a few differences between public and private program. In public bug bounty program, anyone can participate, but in private, only selected people like IT security analyzers, employees, and etc. In public, include black hat, white hat hackers. In private, include only white hackers are allowed. Certification or skills are not required for public. Certified and skilled person required for private. Welcome to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about methodologies of bug bounty hunting. Nowadays, every bug bounty hunter has used different methodologies for hunting vulnerabilities, and it normally varies from security analysis. It takes a while for a researcher to develop their own methodologies and lots of experimentation as well. So, let's understand bug bounty hunting methodologies. First one is analyzing the scope of the program. This is the important scope of the hunting. The scope is the most important aspect of a bug bounty program because it tells you which assets to test, and you don't want to spend time testing out of scope domains. The scope also tells you which are the most recent targets and which are the ones that can be tested to speed up your bounty process. Second one is looking for valid targets. Sometimes the program does not necessarily have the entire infrastructure in its scope, and there are just a number of applications and domains that are in the scope of the program. Valid targets are targets that help you quickly test for vulnerabilities in the scope and reduce time wasting. The next thing, quick overview of targets. That is testing of discovered targets. This methodology usually has done with automated scanning. This basically tells the researcher whether the targets have been tested before or have they been tested a long time ago. It is likely that the application has been tested by researchers before. Next is reviewing all applications. This is a stage where you review all the applications and select the ones based on your skill set. For instance, Google has a number of applications. Some of them are coded in Ruby Rails. Some of them are coded in Python. Fuzzing of errors to expose flaws. Fuzzing is the fastest way to hack an application is to test all of its input parameters. Fuzzing takes place at the input parameters and is a method of iterating different payloads at different parameters to observe responses. When testing for SQL injection vulnerabilities and cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, fuzzing is the most powerful method to learn about errors. It is also used to map an application's backend structure. Next thing is exploiting vulnerabilities. By fuzzing, we identify the vulnerabilities. In other words, vulnerability identification is just one aspect of it. In bug bounty hunting, vulnerabilities have to be exploited constructively to generate strong proof of concepts so that the report is considered in high regard. A well-explained the proof of concepts will accelerate the review process. In conventional penetration tests, vulnerability exploitation is not that important, but in bug bounty hunting, the stronger the proof of concept and the better the reward. Okay, that's it in this video lecture. Welcome to our video lecture where we'll talk about how to become a bug bounty hunter. The bug bounty hunter is a reporter who is rewarded for finding out the vulnerabilities in websites and the software. For this type of hunting, no certification or qualification is required to become a bug bounty hunter, but the architecture of the application and the security issues in application should be read thoroughly. Becoming a bug bounty hunter is also not a matter of age, so get that out of the way. To become a bug bounty hunter, this is a crucial aspect to learn about web application technologies and mobile application technologies. These are the things will help you for starting your career like a bug bounty hunter. Usually, if you form a team with a friend, it will help you bounce off ideas and work more closely with them in order to produce better reports and results. Bug bounty hunting is considered to be a desirable skill nowadays, and it is the highest paid skill as well. The bug bounty hunter regularly makes more than a software developer. It is advised to get started with small programs. Instead of finding and hitting large programs, start off with smaller programs and try to find vulnerabilities and bugs. When you are done with several little code and programs, then you may move on to some bigger programs. Nowadays, many books are available online to guide and help you in learning the basics of fundamentals of penetration testing and bug bounty hunting. As bug bounty generally are about to compromise website targets, it is advised to start with website hacking and then move forward. This is essential to focus on the interesting and exciting area of hacking. Then practice what you have learned in real time. Vulnerable applications and systems are great ways to test your skill set virtual environments. This will also provide you with an estimate of what you are going to contribute to the real world. Getting started with bug reports, you are almost about to start bug bounty hunting. But to start off with bug bounty hunting, you need to learn how the bug bounties work and how to get started with the procedure. This is done in order to assure and maximize the chances of success. Now you are at a beginner level, so I suggest you please don't try to hack the most public and common bugs. If you start off with hacking Microsoft, Google, Facebook and other popular platforms, it is likely that you will end up frustrated because these sites are secure, as they have received and resolved many bug reports. Instead of targeting such sites, try to focus on bounties that go ignored and unnoticed by other hackers and hunters. Learning and networking with others. There are many interesting people and experts to meet at conferences, which creates more opportunities to purchase in this field. Follow them on Twitter, Facebook and so on. Don't expect money-specific reward after reporting the bug. So whenever you report a bug, close the report and start looking for other bugs and vulnerabilities. Develop a mindset of hunting bugs. Keeping yourself up to date. Join Bug Bounty World. Keep reading their blogs, tools, general channels and their conversations about testing and share what you know. These tips will boost you in becoming a bug bounty hunter. Okay. Welcome back. In this video lecture, we will talk about what is Burp. So Burp is Java-based web penetration testing framework, which is mostly used by security professionals in order to identify attacks vectors or in order to find out various security flaws in web application. So this is how Burp looks like. Let's talk about Burp features. One of the most important feature of Burp is interception proxy tool. So why it is called and as interception proxy tool, you will come to know in next lectures. So one good news is that Burp is available for all operating system, Mac OS, Linux OS and Windows OS. So now we know that what is Burp. It's actually a security framework where we can do security testing of various web applications. There are some features of Burp Suite, like we can use Burp Suite in order to do interception proxy. In order to do automatic security scan, we can actually manipulate HTTP and HTTPS requests. Even we can use Burp Suite for good forcing various credentials. We can use it in order to make it a sitemap of website, or in order to crawl a website spider. Burp have different tabs, and all of them have different functionality. Let's say you can see over here that there is a proxy tab which is used for intercepting a proxy. Here is a spider tab which is used for crawling the website. You can see over here scanner tab which actually do automatic security testing of various web application and make a report of it. Then you can see intruder tab which is used for brute forcing or just by doing any password authentication attacks. Then repeater tab which is used in order to send multiple HTTP and HTTPS requests. And then we can check out that what kind of response is given by out of this server. So you can see over here there is one more tab called Decoder, which we can use in order to do some crypto stuff, like you have one string and you want to convert it. Let's say you found one string and that might be a session ID, but that is encrypted. You can actually send that request to Decoder, and there you can just perform some crypto stuff so that you can identify the what kind of string that is. Last, you can see over here there are some tabs like comparer. In this we can compare two responses results and so on. Thanks for watching this video lecture. Have a nice day. See you in next class. Welcome to our video lecture. Before going to start, first see what is Burp Suite Web Application Scanner. Burp Suite is a graphical tool for testing web application security. The tool is written in Java and developed by Portsfigure Security. Burp Suite is the most widely adopted tool in the web security testing market, and 35,000 plus individuals use and trust Burp Suite software, and it is widely used in 120 countries worldwide. Anyone can start using the core features of Burp Suite to test the security of their applications. Some of Burp's more advanced features will take further learning and experience to master. Burp's user-driven workflow is by far the most effective way to perform web security testing, and will take you way beyond the capabilities of any conventional point-and-click scanner. Burp is initiative and user-friendly, and best way to start learning is by doing. The Burp Suite tool has two versions. One is free version that can be downloaded free of charge, like free edition, and another one is full version that can be purchased after a trial period. It's called professional edition. The free version has significantly reduced functionalities. It was developed to provide a comprehensive solution for web application security checks. In addition to basic functionality such as proxy server, scanner, intruder, the tool also contains more advanced options such as spider, a repeater, decoder, a comparer, an extender, and a sequencer. I am very excited to teach Burp Suite tools and top 10 vulnerabilities. That's it in this introduction of Burp Suite. Thank you for watching and see you in next class. Welcome again. We will see how to define in-scope targets using the Burp Suite proxy. When performing a penetration test, it is important to be sure that your attacks are only targeting intended systems. Attacks performed against unintended targets can result in legal liability. To minimize this risk, it is important to define your scope within Burp Suite. In this lecture, we will discuss how to define web application target with Burp. Getting started with Burp to perform web application analysis against a target. You will need to have a remote system running one or more web applications. In this example, an instance of Metasploit 2 is used to perform this task. Metasploit table has several pre-installed vulnerable web applications running on TCP port 80. In the lab setup section, I have explained how to installing Metasploit 2 in virtual machine. Your web browser will need to be configured to pass web traffic to a local instance of Burp. Let's perform web application analysis using the Burp. Just open Burp. The leftmost tab in Burp interface is the target. There are two tabs below this target tab called sitemap and scope. The sitemap tab will automatically populated as content is accessed via the proxy web browser. And the scope tab allows the user to configure sites and site content to be either included or excluded from the scope. To add new site to the scope of assessment, click on the Add button under the Include in Scope table. Adding in-scope content can be as general as a range of IP addresses or as specific as an individual file. The protocol option has a drop-down menu that includes values of any HTTP or HTTPS. The host of IP range field can include a single host name, single IP, or range of IP addresses. So type Metasploit 2 IP address. Additionally, text fields exists for both port and file. Fields can be left blank to limit the specificity of the scope. Fields should be populated using regular expressions. In this lecture, the caret opens each of the regular expressions, the $ closes them, and the backslashes are used to escape the special meaning of the periods in the IP address. If you want to learn regular expressions, many resources are openly available on the internet to explain their use. You can refer regular expressions info website. I mean the regular-expressions.info. The conclusion is regular expressions logically define the conditions whereby a given host, port, or file may be considered in scope. Defining the scope of the assessment in Burp affects the way it operates when interacting with web content. The Burp configurations will define what actions can and cannot be performed on objects that are in or out of the defined scope. Okay, that's all about defining web application target with Burp. Thank you for watching and see you in next class. Welcome back to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about Burp proxy. How we can use Burp as proxy. So you can see over here. Here is one tab in Burp called as proxy tab. So proxy tab is mainly used for intercepting our requests. It will intercept all the requests which is being sent by our browser like Firefox, Chrome, and etc. So proxy tab have subtabs which you can see over here like intercept, history, and options. So with the help of intercept tab, we can check out whether our intercept is on or off. If intercept is on, which means we will intercept our request. If intercept is off, then our request will not go through the Burp. It will just go directly to the web server. Then there is one more tab called HTTP history. HTTP history tab is just keep a record of all the requests which is being intercepted by our Burp. There is one request of WebSocket history and there is one more tab of options, so at options tab we can actually configure our burp suite that on which particular IP and on which port our burp suite will listen for all the requests. In the next lecture, we will see how to configure proxy and intercept request. If you have any doubts on this burp suite proxy tab, feel free to ask. Okay, that's it in this video. Thanks for watching and see you in next lecture. Welcome to this video lecture. We will see how to configure proxy in intercept request. Now let's open up this IP address in browser so you can see over here the BWA. Here you can see a lots of valuable web applications. Now as I told you previous, by using burp suite proxy tab, we can actually intercept our HTTP requests and we can figure out that what kind of request it is, what kind of suitable methods it's using, and what kind of parameters are being passed along with that request. First thing we have to do is we first have to click on proxy tab. You can see inside the proxy tab here, intercept tab, HTTP request history, WebSockets history, and options. By default, you can see that intercept is on, means we will intercept our HTTP request. If you just want to make this intercept off, so simply just click over it and you can see the intercept is off. Which particular IP our burp suite is actually listening, we first have to click on options. You can see over here proxy listeners, which means burp suite is currently listening on IP address 127.0.0.1. The port is 8080, which ensures that our burp suite is up and it's listening on localhost IP address and port is 8080. Okay, so that our request which is being sent by our browser will first go through the burp suite. Whether we want to send that request to the server or we just simply want to drop that request. Let's make the intercept on now. Let's try to configure browser network settings. So I recommend you use Mozilla Firefox because it's best for the security testing. You have to click over here and here is one options menu. Open up. Right now you can see that we are at journal tab, and if you just go network proxy, so by default our Mozilla Firefox works by use system proxy settings, but what we have to do is we have to click on manual proxy configuration, and here we have to write down a localhost IP address that is 127.0.0.1 and port is 8080. Please don't forget to check this check button. Just checking this button, it make burp suite to intercept HTTP requests. Now click on OK. Let's open up BWA home. You can see over here. Now we are actually intercepting our request. You can see over here, this is how your HTTP request looks like. And here you can see the user agent. You can see cookie, and if you want to see the parameters, just click over here. You can see the parameters which are being sent by this request, and parameters are actually present inside our cookie. You can see the header and you can see the hex value. Now let's click on forward. Then you can see that our burp valuable web application is open. Refresh the page. Just for example, if you don't want to open up website, or you just simply want to drop that request, you just have to click on drop. So you can see over here that at the background it's saying error, the request was dropped by user. This is how we can actually intercept HTTP requests by using Burp proxy tab. But the thing is to be noticed that by default configuration of Burp is to only intercept HTTP traffic. So if like you want to intercept the HTTP request, so some website which actually running on HTTPS. In that case, we have to install Burp SSL certificate because we have to trust Burp. In this SSL certificate import lecture, I have explained how to import SSL certificate in browser. That's it in this video lecture. See you in next class. Bye-bye. Welcome back. In this video lecture, we will see how to import Burp CS certificate. By default, when you browse an HTTPS website via Burp, the proxy generates an SSL certificate for each host, signed by its own certificate authority, CA certificate. This CA certificate is generated the first time Burp is run and stored locally. To use Burp proxy most effectively with HTTPS websites, you will need to install Burp's CA certificate as a trusted root in your browser. If you have not already done so, configure your browser to use Burp as its proxy, and configure Burp's proxy listener to generate CA signed per host certificates. This is the default setting. Let's open up Burp in proxy intercept is on. Now open any SSL certificate website like google.com. Here you can see that google.com SSL web response as connection is not secure. Now open up http://burp in your browser and click the CA certificate link to download and save your Burp CA certificate. In Firefox, open the Firefox menu, click on Preferences, go to the Advanced Settings, click on Certificates, click Import. Select the Burp CA certificate file that you have previously saved and click Open. In the dialog box that pops up, check the box Trust this CA to identify websites and click OK. Close all dialogues and restart Firefox. If everything has worked, you should now be able to visit any HTTPS URL via Burp without any security warnings. Okay, thank you for watching this video. See you in next lecture. Welcome to our video lecture. In this video, we will discuss how to perform manual text-based audits using Burp repeater. When performing a web application pen testing, there will often be times that manual testing is required to exploit a given vulnerability. Capturing every response in the proxy, manipulating it and then forwarding it can become very time consuming. Burp repeater feature simplifies this by allowing consistent manipulation and submission of single requests without having to regenerate the traffic in the browser each time. Burp repeater simply works by providing a text-based interface to the web. The repeater can allow a user to interact with remote web services by directly manipulating requests rather than interacting with a web browser. This can be useful when testing cases for which the actual HTML output is more critical than the way it is rendered in the browser. Let's open up browser, click on XSS Reflected. Now turn on My Intercept proxy on. Search ABC any random string. To use Burp repeater, a request needs to be sent to it from either an Android capture via an intercept or from the proxy history. The easiest way to start working with repeater is to select the request you want to work on within another Burp tool. Right click on the request and use the Send to Repeater option to the context menu. By shortcut key Ctrl+R, it also send to repeater tool. This will create a new request tab in the repeater and automatically populate the target details and request message editor with the relevant details. You can modify and issue the request as required. Here you can see that repeater UI lets you work on multiple different requests simultaneously, each in its own tab. When you send requests to repeater, each one is opened in its own numbered tab. Using request HTTP message editor, you can edit the request and reissue it over and over. An HTTP message editor showing the response that was received from the last issued request. When your request is ready to send, click the Go button to send it to the server. The response is displayed when this is received, together with the response length and a timer in milliseconds. You can use the usual HTTP message editor function to help analyze the request and response messages and carry out further actions. A request is made for the user to provide a name and the server returns the provided input in the HTML response. To test for the possibility of cross-site scripting, we should first inject a series of commonly used characters in such an attack. After sending in the series of characters, we can see that all of the characters were returned in the HTML content and none were escaped. This is very strong indication that function is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. We can enter the standard token request for script alert high enclosing script tag. Now let's see the returning HTML content. We can see that the opening script closing tags have been included in the response. This can be confirmed by issuing the request in a browser. Now let's evaluate the response in the client browser by right-clicking on the request and then select Request in Browser. This will generate a URL that can be used to reissue the request in a browser that is actively connected to Burp proxy. We can copy the URL provided manually or by clicking on the copy button. This URL can be pasted into the browser and the request will be issued in the browser. Assuming the cross-site scripting attack was successful, the client-side JavaScript code will be rendered in the browser. But we are not getting the alert message because I'm using Chrome. It has default protection against reflective XSS attacks. Okay, that's all about Burp repeater tool. Thank you and see you in next lecture. Welcome to our video lecture. We are continuing our lecture series on website tools. Assume that when you are working with web application traffic, you will frequently notice content that is encoded for obfuscation or functionality reasons. Website Decoder allows request and response content to be decoded or encoded as needed. Website Decoder provides a platform for both encoding and decoding content when interacting with a web application. This tool is extremely useful because various types of encoding are frequently used across the web for handling and obfuscation reasons. Additionally, the Smart Decode tool examines any given input for null patterns or signatures in order to determine the type of encoding that has been applied to the content and then decodes it. In this lecture, we will discuss how to encode and decode content using Burp Decoder tool. Let's encode and decode using Burp Decoder. In this lab demonstration, I am using BWA web application. Let's open up BWA. Choose the bug as base64 encoding and submit. Here you can see that secret cookie. Now highlight the desired string, right click on it and then select Send to Decoder. As you see in the decoder, value of the cookie parameter is sent to the decoder. By clicking on the Smart Decode button, now select the encoding base64 and decodes it in the field below where the encoded text was originally entered. You can see that text is decoded as any BUS3M %2F. Here you can see that last 3 characters as URL encoder, so select %2F and choose URL option. Here you can see it is decoded. If Burp is unable to determine the type of encoding used, manual decoding can be performed for multiple different types of encoding to include URL, HTML, base64, ASCII hex, and so on. A decoder can also be used to encode strings. Okay, that's all about decoder. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. See you in next lecture. Welcome to our video lecture. Now we are continuing Burp tools. We will discuss how to identify and evaluate varied server responses using Burp Comparer. When performing a web application assessment, it is often important to be able to easily identify variations in HTTP requests or responses. The comparer feature simplifies this process by providing a graphical overview of variation. Burp Comparer works by analyzing any two sources of content for differences. These differences are identified as content that has been modified, deleted, or added. Quickly isolating variations in content can be effective in determining the distinct effects that particular actions have upon the behavior of a web application. Now, we know that comparer tools is used for comparing two responses. But the question arises at why we use this tool. Here I am discussing 4 uses. Let's assume that when looking for username enumeration conditions, you can compare responses to failed logins using valid and invalid usernames, looking for subtle differences in responses. When an intruder attack has resulted in some very large responses with different lengths than the base response, you can compare this to quickly see where the differences lie. When comparing the sitemaps or proxy history entries generated by different types of users, you can compare pairs of similar requests to see where the differences lie and that give rise to different application behavior. When testing for blind SQL injection bugs using Boolean condition injection and other similar tests, you can compare two responses to see whether injecting different conditions has resulted in a relevant difference in responses. To use Burp to perform web application analysis against a target, you will need to have a remote system that is running on one or more web applications. This lab provided an instance of Metasploit Table 2 is used to perform this task. Metasploit Table 2 has several pre-installed vulnerable web applications running on the TCP port 80. Okay, let's open up DVWA web application brute force vulnerabilities. Let's open up Burp suite, turn on intercept. Tap random password for capturing post fields in a proxy. Hit enter. Here you can see that post fields are captured. In previous Burp suite intruder to brute force the login for DVWA. Let's send the intruder to position. One payload in particular generated a longer response than all the others. In payload option, I am typing password and pass at 123. Hit start attack button. Here you can see that 3 payloads brute force response. Evaluate the variations in response. Right click on the event and then click on send to comparer. The same thing should be done for one of the control examples. After sending each event to comparer, we can evaluate them by selecting the comparer tab at the top of the screen. Ensure that one of the previous responses is selected for item 1 and the other is selected for item 2. In the bottom right corner of the screen, this is an option to choose compare words or compare bytes. In this particular case, select the words option. By doing this, you can see that some of the content modified in the response reveals that the login was successful. Any content that has been modified, deleted or added is highlighted from one response to the next and make it very easy to visually compare the two responses. Okay, that's all about Burp suite comparer tool. Thanks for watching and see you in next class. Bye bye. Welcome back to our video lecture. Web application sessions are often maintained by session ID tokens that consist of random or pseudo-random values. Because of this, randomness is absolutely critical to the security of these applications. In this recipe, we will see how to collect generated values and test them for randomness using Burp suite sequencer. Burp suite sequencer performs a number of different mathematical evaluations against a sample of pseudo-random numbers in an attempt to determine the sources of entropy from when they were generated. Live capture can be used to generate sample values by issuing crafted requests that will result in new values being assigned. This is often done by removing an existing cookie's value from a request so that the response provides a new session token in the form of a new setCookie response header. Let's open up browser. Open Burp suite and intercept is on. Let's refresh the page. Here you can see that proxy is captured the request from the browser. Now I'm going to send this request to repeater tool and right click and send to repeater. Repeater tool we have already learned. In the params tab, we can add or remove cookies, post data and the URL. Now I will remove all the cookies except security. Hit go button to send the repeater. Here you can see that in the response editor, get the response from the server. If a response containing the set cookies header value and other pseudo-random number value to be tested, so we need to be sent to sequencer. Burp will automatically populate the cookie drop-down menu with all the cookie values set in the response. Alternatively, you can use the custom location field and then the configure button to designate any location in the response for testing. After defining the value to be tested, click on the Start Live Capture button. This will start submitting a large number of requests to acquire additional values for the defined parameter. Burp will issue a large number of requests with the PHP SESSID value stripped from the request. This will cause the server to generate a new session token for each request. By doing this, we can acquire a sample of values that can be subjected to FIPS testing. This will consist of series of tests that will evaluate the entropy associated with the generated pseudo-random numbers. All of these tests can be represented in a graphical format that is easy to understand. For a highly accurate and true FIPS test, a total of 20,000 values, but an analysis can be performed with as few as 100 values. In addition to performing a live capture, the manual load tab can be used to upload or paste a list of values for testing. That's all about Sequencer. If you have confused with any tool, please feel free to ask. In the OWASP Top 10 Vulnerability lectures, we will discuss how they are used in pen testing or bug bounty program. Thank you. See you in the next class. Welcome to our video lecture. We will discuss how to use the supplemental engagement tools in BubSuite to gather or organize information on a target. BubSuite also has a number of tools that can be used for basic information gathering and target proofing. These tools are called engagement tools. BubSuite engagement tools work in a variety of ways depending on the tool being used. Many of engagement tools perform searches and examine the already received responses for a particular type of content. The Discover Content tool provides the functionality of discovering new web content by brute forcing file and directory names by cycling through defined word lists. Engagement tools can be accessed by right-clicking on any object in the Sitemap tab and then scrolling down to the expansion menu and selecting the desired tool. By default, the selected engagement tool will recursively target the object selected to include all files and directories within. Now let's discuss one by one. Search tool. This tool can be used to search for terms, phrases, or regular expressions. It will return any HTTP requests or responses that include the queried term. For each entry returned, the queried term will be highlighted in either the request or response. Find comments. This tool searches through all JavaScript, HTML, and other sources of code throughout the specified web content and locates all the comments. These comments can also be exported for later review. This can be particularly helpful at times as some developers will often leave sensitive information in the comments of code that they have written. Find scripts. This tool will identify all the client and server side scripts within the web content. Find references. This tool will pass through all HTML content and identify other referenced content. Analyze target. This tool will identify all dynamic content, static content, and parameters within the specified web content. This can be particularly useful to organize resting of web applications that have a lot of parameters or dynamic content. Discover content. This tool can be used to brute force directories and file names by cycling through a word list and defined list of file extensions. Schedule task. This tool allows the user to define time and dates to start and stop various tasks within BubSuite. Simulate manual testing. This tool presents an excellent way to appear as though you are performing a manual analysis on a web application when you have actually stepped away for coffee and donuts. These are absolutely no practical function for this tool beyond just bamboozling the boss. That's about Burp engagement tools. Thank you and see you in next class. Welcome back. In this section, we will learn about broken authentication and session management. What is broken authentication and session management vulnerability? It is the one of the top 10 OWASP vulnerabilities. Normally, developers doesn't concentrate much on how users' session is being managed. This negligence results into introducing broken authentication and session management vulnerabilities in the web applications, which is quite a bit hard for developers to detect by themselves. Making use of this vulnerability, an attacker can hijack a session, gain authorized access to the system, which allows disclosures and modification of unauthorized information. The sessions can be hijacked using stolen cookies or sessions using XSS, which means cross-site scripting. The websites usually create a session cookie and session ID for each valid session, and these cookies contain sensitive data like username and passwords. So when the session is ended either by logout or browser closure unexpectedly, these cookies should be invalidated. Means for each session there should be a new cookie. If the cookies are not invalidated, the sensitive data will exist in the system. For example, a user using a public computer in college or office, the cookies of vulnerable sites sits on the system and exposed to the attacker. An attacker uses the same public computer. After some time, the sensitive data is compromised. In the same way, a user using a computer in the public, instead of logging off, he closes the browser unexpectedly. An attacker uses the same system. When browses the same vulnerable site, the previous session of the victim will be opened. The attacker can do whatever he wants to do, from stealing profile information, bank information, and etc. A check should be done to find the strength of the authentication and session management. Keys, session tokens, cookies should be implemented properly without compromising passwords. Let's see what are those mistakes for broken authentication and session management. Session IDs exposed on URL can lead to session fixation attack. Basically, developers add session IDs with a values in the URL. And session IDs same before and after login and logout. Session timeouts are not implemented correctly. Application is assigning same session ID for each new session. Authentication parts of the application are protected using SSL, and passwords are stored in hashed or encrypted format. The sessions can be reused by a low privileged user. Okay, in the next lecture we will learn lab demonstrations on vulnerabilities. Thank you. See you in next lecture. Welcome back. In this video lecture, we will see brute force attack on login page. Authentication lies at the heart of an application's protection against unauthorized access. Let's demonstrate a technique to bypass authentication using a simulated login page from DWA. We are using a taken from DWA web application project. Before going to start, first ensure that Burp is correctly configured with your browser. Here I am using Firefox browser. And visit the login page of application you are testing your browser. Here you can see that DWA brute force vulnerable page. In the Burp proxy intercept tab, click on it. You can see that intercept is on. Back to our browser, enter some random details in the login page. And submit the request. Here you can see that the captured request can be viewed in the Proxy Intercept tab. Right click on the request to bring up the context menu. Then click on Send to Intruder. You can also send requests to the intruder via context menu in any location where HTTP requests are shown, such as sitemap or proxy history. Now open up the Intruder, Positions tab. Here I am clearing the preset payload positions by using the Clear button on the right of the request editor. Change the attack to Cluster Bomb using the Attack tab drop-down menu. Add username and password parameter values as positions and using the Add button. Go to the Payloads tab. Now in the payload settings, ensure payload set is 1 and payload type is set to simple list. In the payload options settings, enter some possible usernames. Next, in the payload sets options, change payload set to 2. Okay, in the payload options settings, enter some possible passwords. You can also use possible password list. Finally, click the Start Attack button. Brute force attack is started here. In the intruder attack window, you can sort the results using the column headers. Let's sort by length and see the login status. Here you can see that only one result length is differ. That's cool. Let's open as render window. Here we can see that login is successful by payload 1 username as admin and payload 2 password as password. Okay, that's all about brute force attack. See you in next class. Welcome back. In this lecture we will see how to bypass login page using SQL injection. Attacker can also try to inject its own special SQL query on inside the login page in order to bypass the login page, because what happens is sometimes login pages are also vulnerable to SQL injection. If the login page is vulnerable to SQL injection, then an attacker can easily bypass that authentication mechanism. Now let's see how we can do login page SQL injection. Now let's perform SQL injection on login pages. Here you can see that BWA web application. So this is the application which we have used while testing SQL injection. If I just go here, you will see a login pages. Let's open up login page. Hit hack button to submit. Here is the login page is vulnerable to SQL injection. Here you can see that we are not logged in. Let's try another random credentials and let's see whether it works or not. Here you can see that it has displayed wrong username or a password. Let's see the query inside the PHP file. We can see the query here. Copy it up and paste it here. Here you can see that this is the query which is executing at the backend. select start from user where name is admin123 and password is 12345, which means it's doing an comparison between the user supplied input or between the data which is present in the database. Now in order to bypass this login page, what we can do is we can do a small trick in order to inject some SQL payload to server application confused. So what we can do is, here is the place of username. So if I just write here admin123 single quote or 1 equals to 1, it means we are closing this field name by just here admin123, and I am adding another condition that is 1 equals to 1. So as we all know that 1 equals to 1 and it's a universal truth. This will remain true, and by adding our operator, this will not matter that whether this part should be true or not. If this is true or condition will become true. So in the place of password, I just add here something admin or 1 equals to 1 and in the place of name. Okay, our query is ready. Select start from user where name is admin123, okay, or 1 equals to 1. If this will not true, then this will be true, and the password should be password. This will not true, this part will always true. 1 equals to 1. Let's try to add this our input. So admin123 single quote or 1 equals to 1 copied up, paste it here. Click on submit. Here we are. We are successfully able to log in, and you can see that our injected query which is executed at the backend. Okay, so this was a small example that how we can bypass login pages using SQL injection. Okay, that's it in this lecture. Thank you and see you in next lecture. Welcome back to our video lecture. In this video lecture, we will learn how to prevent broken authentication and session management vulnerability. Where possible, implement multi-factor authentication to prevent automated credential stuffing, brute force and stolen credential reuse attack. Don't deploy with any default credentials, particularly for admin users. Implement weak password checks, testing on new or changed passwords against a list of top 10,000 worst passwords. Align password length, complexity, rotation policies. Ensure registration, credential recovery, and API pathways are hardened against account enumeration attacks by using the same messages for all the outcomes. Limit delay failed login attempts. Log all the failures and alert administrators when credential stuffing, brute force, or other attacks must be detected. Use a server-side secure and built-in session manager that generates new random session ID with high entropy after login. Session IDs should not be in the URL. Be safe, securely stored and invalidated after logout and idle. Okay, that's it in this lecture. See you in next lecture. Welcome to this video lecture. We will discuss insecure direct object reference. Insecure direct object reference means IDOR vulnerability occurs when an attacker can access or modify some reference to an object such as a file, database record, account, and etc., which should actually be inaccessible to them. For example, when viewing your account on a website with private profiles, you might visit www.xyz.com/user equal to 123. However, if you tried www.site.com/user equal to 124 and were granted access, this site would be considered vulnerable to an IDOR bug. Identifying this type of vulnerability ranges from easy to hard. The most basic is similar to the example above, where the ID provided is a simple integer auto-incremented as new records are added to the site. So testing for this would involve adding or subtracting one from the ID to check for results. If you are using Burp, you can automate this by sending the request to the Burp intruder. Set a payload on the ID and then use a numeric list with start and stop values stepping by one. When running that type of test, look for content lengths that changes, signifying different responses being returned. In other words, if a site isn't vulnerable, you should consistently get some type of access denied message with the same content length. Where things are more difficult is when a site tries to obscure references to their object references using things like randomized identifiers such as universal unique identifiers. In this case, the ID might be a 36-character alphanumeric string which is impossible to guess. In this case, one way to work is to create two user profiles and switch between those accounts testing objects. So if you are trying to access user profiles with a UUID, create your profile with user A and then with user B, try to access that profile since you know the UUID. If you are testing specific records like invoice IDs, trips, and etc., all identified by UUIDs similar to the example above, try to create those records as user A and then access them as user B since you know the valid UUIDs between profiles. If you are able to access the objects, that's an issue, but not overly severe since the IDs are 36 characters randomized strings. This makes them all but unguessable or isn't lost though. At this point, the next step is to try to find an area where that UUID is leaked. For example, on a team-based site, can you invite user B to your team? And if you do so, does the server respond with their UUID even before they have accepted? That's one way sites leak UUIDs. In other situations, check the page source when visiting a profile. Sometimes site will include a JSON block for the user, which also includes all of the records created by them, thereby leaking sensitive UUIDs. At this point, even if we can't find a leak, some sites will reward the vulnerability if the information is sensitive. It's really up to you to determine the impact and explain to the company why you believe this issue should be addressed. That's all about insecure direct object reference vulnerability. Thanks for watching. See you in the next class. Welcome. In this video lecture, we will discuss insecure direct object reference. Insecure direct object reference vulnerability. Before going to start, let's see one example that there are 5 objects or 5 files and there is one another file called as demo. We can access all that 5 objects if our request contains reference of that demo file. And if we want to try to access that file object without the reference of the demo file, we are not able to access that file objects. What happened is an insecure direct object reference. The user supplied input is used to access a particular object. And if the user adds something malicious so that it can point to something different object, which means a user tries to access a particular object but user is not authorized to access that object. So if the user is successfully able to access that object, which means that web application is insecure direct object reference vulnerable. Here you can see that HTTP proxy request. You can see here, and this request is accepting one parameter called as page, and here is the page name source_viewer.php. This is our reference page parameter. If you can see the another parameter called php file, and the php file which we are trying to access is called userfile.php. We can try this userfile.php if we are making HTTP request with the reference of this file source.php. Now let's demonstrate how this insecure direct object reference works. For this lab demonstration, I am using OWASP broken web application. Let me open this up, so let's go. You will find the insecure direct object reference and then source viewer. Let's have a look at the functionality of this page. If you want to look at the source code of any of them, just select any of the file and click on view file. Let's select any file to see the source of the file. Here I am choosing login.php and click a view file. Here you can see that source code of login page. Turn on Burp intercept. So let's select any file in order to read its source code. Click on view file. And you will see that Burp will start blinking. Let's go here to the proxy tab, and here is the full request which is going through our browser. It's a post request, and you can see that the request is going to this link. Here is the page source for .php. It's the page where we are written, you can see here. Now let's go back. So here is the HTTP header. It's a host information, user agent, then content length, then referrer. At the bottom here you will find the interesting information which give us an idea how direct object reference works. If you just look at here at the first here, it is written page and the value of the page is source_viewer.php, which is this one, and then it is an additional parameter php file which you can see here, and the php file name is the file name which we want to see here. You can see that we have selected upload file.php file, which means this page source.php, this one is actually acting as a reference in order to view the content of this page. Let's change the php file parameter value as index.php. Now let me just click on forward. If we are able to view the page source, which means this web page is insecure direct object reference vulnerable. Let's see that whether we are able to see the index.php source code. Here you can see that here is the source code of index.php file. You can see that we are successfully able to view the page source of index.php file. So we are not authorized to view the page source but still we can able to view the page source due to insecure object reference. I told you earlier that what is insecure direct object reference, which means there are some files which are not authorized to view by some another person, means we are not authorized to see the source code of that files. So this web application is vulnerable to unsecure direct object reference. We can try to view the page source of different pages which are not listed in drop-down option. Let's resubmit the form again. Now let's try to view the page source of this page itself. We are on this page sourceviewer.php. Now PHP file parameters equals to sourceviewer.php. And if I just click on forward, here you can see the file is sourceviewer.php file, and we can able to see that the source of this page itself. That's all about insecure direct object reference vulnerability. Thanks for watching. See you in next lecture. Welcome back. In this video lecture, we will talk about another top 10 OWASP vulnerabilities, that is security misconfiguration. Security misconfiguration vulnerabilities could occur if a component is susceptible to attack due to an insecure configuration option, poorly documented default configuration, or poorly documented side effects of optional configuration. This could range from failing to set a useful security header on a web server to forgetting to disable default platform functionality that could grant administrative access to an attacker. Let's see security misconfiguration most important issues may occur. The main cause of security misconfiguration issues are wrong application logic. What happens is, while developing a web application, the web developer implements some wrong application logic which results in security misconfigurations. One of the common example is user hide secret pages by unknown URL. Example, a web developer wants to hide some secret pages from the users. It actually changed the name of that URL so that the user can't be figured out that what's the name of that URL. This is how the web application or the secret pages remain hidden. But in your mind, one question may arise, what is the threat? The threat is that someone can brute force or in order to find some interesting URLs, and if they are able to find that URLs which are hidden, that resultant. Some of that misconfiguration issues also results in path disclosure or even directory traversal attacks. That's it in this introduction to security misconfiguration. See you in the next class. Welcome back. In the previous video lecture, we have talked about security misconfiguration introduction. Now in this lecture, we will look at demo on security misconfiguration. Here I am using OWASP broken web application first. Here you can see that security misconfiguration and secret administrative pages. By these pages, the aim is to try to find some hidden pages which the administrator has actually hid from the user. Web application is actually including all the pages from these parameter pages. What we can do is, we can actually try to brute force, or we can actually try to find different pages by doing some different attacks, like dictionary attack, brute force attack, so on. The security misconfiguration issues actually occurs when a wrong business or a web application logic is made by web application developer. Let's open up Burp suite. Here I am using free version. Here you can see that Burp suite. Welcome back. In the previous video lecture we have talked about security misconfiguration introduction. Now in this lecture we will look at demo on security misconfiguration. Here I am using OWASP broken web application first. Here you can see that security misconfiguration and secret administrative pages. By these pages, the aim is to try to find some hidden pages which the administrator has actually hid it from the user. Web application is actually including all the pages from these parameter pages. What we can do is let's open up Intruder. This Intruder tab, we can actually attack the web application through different ways. Like we can do password guessing attacks, or dictionary attacks, or brute forcing attacks, and so on. The first thing you will see here, the target IP address port is 80. Now let's click over positions. The positions is the main thing which we can take care of. Now that the positions are actually the points on which we want to do attack or we want to repeat. First I clear the positions, click clear. Now we can select the request, send this request multiple times to the server. Because we want page and it should be changed in every request. So now what we can do is we have to select this thing which we want to repeat or we want to change. Then click on add, and here you will see that this position has been selected. Now show here the different attack tabs. Select snipper as it is. Now once we did this, we have to select the payload. We want to use, here we will see the payload set 1 and payload type a simple list. There are a lot of another payloads like runtime file, case modification, and etc. We can add a list of possible pages list, but that's only available for a pro version. Means we have to purchase a Burp suite license or pro version in order to access and adding username list and password list and so on. Now we can do is we can manually add items in our list. Let's add admin.php, welcome.php, query.php, hidden.php, just any random files .php and hit enter. So now what will happen is our Burp suite will send the same request to the target web application, these different pages by adding here. Let's back to our payloads. Now here you can see that payloads has been selected. Here you can start attack. Let's go here to Intruder and click on start attack. Otherwise you can directly click on over here and click start attack. Now click on OK. You will see that Burp has started attack. Now it's finished. So here we can see that a request number payload, its status code and its length. So if I just click on welcome.php, here you will see its request. So here is the same request. So you can see the status is 200. Okay, now let's see the HTML content and let's just render the HTML content to see how this page looks like, whether this page is present or not. Here you will see a 404 page not found. Now let's select admin.php. Here you will see that you are successfully able to find a secret page inside the target web application. Here you will find, we will just go there. Here you will see that a secret PHP configuration page. Here you can find a PHP configuration and so on. Web developers, do they actually hide some important pages, important directories from the user by just changing their names? Attackers just try to brute force or guess that directory attack. If he gets this hidden files or directory, he can do whatever he wants. That's it in the security misconfiguration. Thank you. See you in next class. Welcome to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will see on security misconfiguration directory listing issues. What is directory listing issue? If directory listing is disabled on a web browser, web server, attackers might discover and exploit web server vulnerabilities that will result in a directory listing of some specific application directories. Such data allows the attacker to gain the information needed without having to exploit vulnerabilities. In other words, directory listing is a web server function that displays a list of all the files when there is not an index file, such as index.php and default.asp, in a specific website directory. Cool. If you are not getting about this bug, I am sure end of this lecture you will get about this bug. Okay, so in this live demonstration I am using Burp free edition and OWASP broken web project methodologies 2. So let's open up browser. Here I am already opened OWASP broken web project methodologies 2 over here. If your Burp target is empty, so in the Burp proxy tab of intercept and then visit the page of the application you are testing. For example, the methodologies home page and so on. In my Burp, I have already did a lot of testing on OWASP application. So now what I am going to do is select the target tab. This tab contains detailed information about your target applications and lets you drive the process of testing for vulnerabilities. Choose your target over here. I am choosing methodologies directory. So our aim is to search all the directories and files in the methodologies directory. So right click on the methodologies folder and click on spider from here. Click OK. You will see the spidering is started over here. Automatically pop up form request to fill the forms like login form, search form, etc. So here I am ignoring the forms. You can see that in the spider tab, number of requests made, byte transferred, request queued, form queue. Suppose if you are using a professional version, you will get scanning report as well. Here you can see that we are successfully find directory listing vulnerability. Click on include directory. Here you will see that some of the security information files. So let me open what type of information we get here. Copy the URL, paste in browser, So let me open config.inc. Here you will see that this file contains the information about database host, username, password, and database name. Okay, thank you for watching. See you in next class. Welcome back to this video lecture. We will discuss SQL injection now. Before going to start, let's talk about what is data, why we are securing data from the database. Data is one of the most important components of information systems. Database-powered web applications are used by the organization to get data from customers. SQL is the acronym for Structured Query Language. It is used to retrieve and manipulate data in the database. Now you can get some information about database. A database is an organized collection of data stored and accessed electronically. Let's look at SQL. SQL is a domain-specific language used in the programming and designed for managing data held in a relational database management system or for stream processing in a relational data stream management system. Now question arises is what is SQL injection? SQL injection is an attack that poisons dynamic SQL statements to comment out certain parts of statement or appending a condition that will always be true. It takes advantage of the design flaws in poorly designed web applications to exploit SQL statements to execute malicious SQL code. Let's look at how SQL injection works. Assume that here is one attacker and SQL vulnerable website. The types of attacker that can be performed using SQL injection depending on the type of the database engine. The attack works on a dynamic statement is a statement that is generated at runtime using parameters, password from a web form or URI query string. Assume that this http abc.com $ID equals to ID parameter has SQL vulnerability. First, attackers finds vulnerable pages with different payloads. Once he finds the vulnerability, modify, delete data, whatever he wants. Nowadays, there are so many tools available for SQL exploitations. You can also exploit manually by using union statements and so on. Okay, that's it in this video lecture. Thank you for watching. See you in next lecture. Welcome to this video lecture. We will talk about how to find SQL injection vulnerabilities. SQL injections are one of the most popular server-side injection attacks. SQL injection attacker tries to inject SQL query as input. And if the web application is not sanitizing the user input, then query is being executed on the database. If the user query is successfully executed on the database, then the attacker can dump all the data from that database, so with the help of SQL injection. The attacker can insert, update, delete something from that remote database. SQL injection is of various types like error-based SQL injection, blind SQL injection, time-based and boolean-based SQL injection. Let's see how we can find SQL injection and inject SQL query inside the web applications to retrieve data. Let's open up BWA web application. Now let me select SQL injection bug here. SQL injection post method. Here you can see that this page is vulnerable to SQL injection. Now the question arises is how we can find the SQL vulnerability. First we have to find error-based SQL injection. As you know that in the server side, SQL string is passed to a SQL server to execute the query. Commonly, every string begin and ended with the quotation mark or inverted comma, single or double. Let's find error-based SQL vulnerability. Let's search here. Film as random name. Here we can see that film is not found. Tap Iron Man. Film is found in the database. Let's check with double quote. Here you can see that there is no error is generated. This means double quote is not used in the SQL query string in the database. Let's try with single quote. Here we can see that error is generated. This page is single quote error based string. That's it. It's simple. Okay, in this lecture, it's all about SQL injection. Thank you for watching. See you in next class. Welcome to this video lecture. We will talk about how to find SQL injection vulnerability multiple ways. We have to start our OS OWASP broken web application. Here you can see that the OS broken up application is up and running. Before going to start, first ensure that your browser is configured with the Burp suite. So let's start Bricks vulnerable web application, which comes inside OS OWASP broken web application. Here you will find the OS Bricks link. Just click over that. Let's go here and select as content pages. So here you can see there are total 6 content pages and all content pages are vulnerable to SQL injection. So content page 1 as the basics one. So let's open up content page 1. In the previous lecture, I have told you earlier that in this video lecture, I will cover error-based SQL injection, and in which we will dump the database to an SQL error. One thing, remember that before testing any application, we first have to find the logic behind that application and how the application is working and what kind of SQL queries are executing at the backend. Let us try to test with this application and with this page. So you will see that this page is showing the details of users like user ID is 0 and username as admin along with the user email. And here you will find a SQL query which is being used for retrieving user information. Bricks is a vulnerable web application. It is showing a SQL query which is executing at the backend, but when you will test the real-time web application like Google, Facebook, you will see nothing. If we look at the URL, here you will find an additional parameter called as ID and the value 0 is given to the user ID. Now let us try to give any integer values like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Here you will see the response as error that user doesn't exist. The first part of the finding a SQL injection is to fuzz the application. Now, in your mind, one question arises is, what is the fuzzing? Fuzzing means giving an weird input to the web application so that we can able to break the SQL query, which the SQL query is executing at the backend. I have given and long integer values and alphanumeric numbers, but we are not able to break the query. Now what we can do is, if I just write here id equals to 2, you will see over here that user details which has id 2 and much is looking at this query. Now we can understand that it's actually retrieving a data from the database whose ID user is 2, right? Now, in order to break the SQL query, in previous lecture I have explained the error-based SQL query. Let's try it once. Let's add a single code and see what happens. Here you will see that we are successfully able to break the SQL query. We get response as SQL error. Now let's look at what are the other ways to break the SQL queries. We can also add double quotes. Once again, we are able to break SQL query. Now instead of double quotes, we can add backslash. So backslash is used for escaping characters in MySQL. Here you can see that backslash also works. This means that this web application is vulnerable for single quote, double quote, and backslash will work depends upon the application logic. Because sometimes a single quote will work and double quote will not work sometimes, backslash will work. And both of them, single quote and double quote, will not work. The main thing is we have to find the application logic. This is how application work. That's it in this video lecture. We are continuing this in next lecture. Thank you. See you in next class. Welcome back. In this video lecture, we will see cross-site scripting overview. Cross-site scripting vulnerability. It's a client-side attack and it's most popularly called as XSS. So, cross-site scripting vulnerability is often found in a lot of web applications, especially where a user provides input receiving areas like search forms and feedback forms. If the user supplied input is actually being executed by the web application, which means that web application is cross-site scripting vulnerable. The user provides JavaScript code instead of providing a legitimate text. And if the JavaScript code is being executed by the web application, which means that web application is cross-site scripting vulnerability can also be used, and in order to stolen user cookies, session IDs, and even it can also lead to CSRF attack. So cross-site scripting is of three types. The first one is reflected cross-site scripting and the second one is stored cross-site scripting and third one is DOM-based cross-site scripting. Now let's talk about both of them in much more detail. Reflected cross-site scripting is also called as non-persistent cross-site scripting because here the user input is not stored in database, which means if the user input is not stored in the database, the response of the web application is only shown to the user who is actually injecting the JavaScript. Which means if we are injecting something in search bar or our JavaScript is being executed by that application, which means the response of that JavaScript can only be shown to us, not anyone else, because the input is not stored in the database and often found in the search bar. Okay, now let's talk about stored cross-site scripting. So stored cross-site scripting, also called as stored XSS and persistent XSS. Why? Because the user input is stored in database, and once the user input is stored in the database, then there are, just for example, there is one comment section and we commented out a JavaScript query, and in place of comment we added JavaScript queries and we will click on submit. Anyone visit that page, then the JavaScript also being executed on that user, which means the impact of stored cross-site scripting is much more than non-persistent cross-site scripting, and then it can also lead to CSRF attack. Now let's see that DOM-based cross-site scripting. DOM-based XSS simply means a cross-site scripting vulnerability that appears in the DOM, means document object model, instead of part of the HTML. In reflective and stored cross-site scripting attacks, you can see the vulnerability payload in the response page, but in DOM-based cross-site scripting, the HTML source code and response of attack will be exactly the same. That's all about XSS. Thanks for watching and see you in next class. Welcome to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will see that how XSS vulnerability found in the reflected search result form input. For this demonstration, I will use OWASP BWA to broken web application. Before going to start, first ensure that Burp is correctly configured with your browser. Let's open up XSS DNS lookup page to test for XSS vulnerabilities. Let me check how this web page works, means behavior of this page. What I am going to do is, let's search DNS lookup for google.com. Type google.com and hit submit. Here you will see over here that we get search results. In this course, we have not concentrated on DNS lookup results. You can see over here that resulted for google.com. So let me inspect this page. Okay, here you can see that division tag results for google.com. Here no JSON or nothing. It is directly displaying. So google.com is searchable. Suppose if the search item is not found, it is displaying the same. So let's check it once. Check for random item. Here you can see that it is same here. For this XSS we don't have any problem, right? So let me open up Burp and intercept is on. Search item. Here you can see that Burp is intercepting the HTTP request. This is the post request, action for URL, and so on. So I will send it to repeater for analyze request and response side by side. Click on parameter tab. We can input various XSS payloads into the input field. So what I'm going to do is, I will add one simple XSS payload as open script alert XSS closing script. This example we have used a payload that attempts to perform a proof of concept pop-up in our browser. Now click on Go button. Here you can see over here that in the response, we can assess whether the attack payload appears unmodified in the response. If it exists, this means that application is vulnerable to excesses. You can find the response quickly using the search bar at the bottom of the response panel. The highlighted text is the result of our search. So right-click on the response to bring up the context menu. Click Show Response in Browser to copy the URL. Click Copy. Now paste the copied URL in the browser. Here you can see that we have successfully injected JavaScript into the web application. It's a simple one. In the next lecture, we will try with a DVWA vulnerable app with check all the security levels for XSS vulnerability. If you have any doubt on this lecture, I will update another lecture with by passing the HTML tags to run our JavaScript. Thank you for watching. See you in next class. Welcome to this video lecture. We will see how to find cross-site scripting vulnerabilities with different security tools. In previous lecture, we have learnt about XSS overview. Okay, now let's see one simple example to find XSS vulnerability. Let me open up DVWA vulnerable web application. In this lecture, I will demonstrate with security level low, medium and high. Here you can see that security level is low. Now click on XSS reflected. You can see that this is reflected cross-site scripting vulnerable page. So first of all, let's try to add a normal text to analyze behavior of this page. Type XSS, hit submit button. Here you will see that we get response as hello XSS. This web page will display input what I have sent to web application. Now let me try is this page vulnerable for XSS or not. What I am going to do is, first I will send XSS payload means JavaScript code, tap script alert XSS vulnerable as message and closing the script. Hit submit button. Here you will see that we got pop-up message. You can see that we have successfully able to execute JavaScript on this page. This means that this page is vulnerable for XSS. Let me show you in source code. You will see here in pop-up source code, it is directly displaying user inputs. Now I am going to change security level as medium. Let's see what happened. Here is DVWA security select as medium and hit submit. You can see that in top of the page, security level is currently medium. Click on XSS reflected. Let's see that is this page vulnerable for previous XSS payload or not. Type open script alert XSS vulnerable and closing script. Hit submit button. You see that is payload is not vulnerable for this page. let's see the source code of this page. Click on View Source Code. You can see over here that developer added some statement as str replace script replace with null character by getName. In the PHP str replace function, will replace only those characters which appear in the string. So what I'm going to do is, I will add same XSS payload, but there is one trick, that is, developer doesn't concentrate on the case sensitive payloads. So send a payload with small and big letters. Tap opening script, alert, XSS vulnerable and close the script. Here you can see that we have got pop-up message. This page is vulnerable for XSS with case sensitive. Now we are successful using with 2-level security. So change security level as high. Now let's try with low-level XSS payload. This payload is not working in this page. So let's try with medium level payload. Okay, this payload is also not working. So let me open up PHP source code of this page. Here you can see that developer preg replacing each character with null value as SCRIPT pattern, as I have told you earlier in the XSS overview lecture. We can also find XSS vulnerability in DOM. It means document object module. So let's try to execute JavaScript in DOM. Type image src equals to and hit submit button. You can see that this has worked. Type image src equals to x and mention the attribute like on error equals to alert function XSS vulnerable. Hit submit. Here you will see over here that pop-up message. In this lecture we have learned how to find XSS with low, medium and high level security. Using this lecture, you try it in stored XSS also. It will work successful. But the thing is, in stored XSS, all the payloads that you have submitted to server, all these payloads are stored in the database. But the question arises is, what is the use of this vulnerability? Is it a security issue? How attacker can exploit this vulnerability? In the next lecture, we will see how attacker can exploit this vulnerability. Okay, that's all about this lecture. Thank you for watching and see you in next lecture. Bye-bye. Welcome to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about how the XSS vulnerability in our real life and how to prevent them. Let me explain the process and the impact with an example. Imagine that it is a Sunday morning and you receive a call from your mother. Mom is so scared because all the money in her bank account has been stolen. You, as a good son, enter the online bank application and review the account. When you see all is correct, but there is a transaction that moved all the money to another account, when your mother calls the bank just answers that this transaction was executed with her valid credentials and is not possible to do anything because all is correct. Now the question rises, how did this happen? You discovered that a day ago she received a message by email from the bank to win a vacation in Paris. She logged into the website and following the recommendation that you as a security expert gave to her, she checked in the web browser's address bar that the bank's domain was correct. She called the bank again to confirm this promotion, but the assistant tells her that no one in the bank knows about the promotion. You know what happened now? Your mother was the victim of a reflected XSS sent by email to steal the credential of her bank account. Reflected XSS is a type of XSS that is executed at the moment. Mostly, it affects GET requests. If you examine the email received by your mother, you can see that the email contains a link to the promotion. This link includes the valid bank's domain name, something like this. Here, www.bank_domain.com/access account equals to, then single quote, script, alert, and blah blah. The value assigned to the variable does not appear like an account number. It actually is a JavaScript code. You can identify it by the script tag, which is the tag used in HTML to insert a code script. Now, you can infer that the account variable is vulnerable. It has a lack of input validation that allowed an attacker to inject JavaScript code and send a lot of emails with the malicious link to people in order to execute the attack. This is the reason why this type of exercise is called first order. But if you enter the real URL without using the malicious link, you will not see the attack. The attack just affects the user who is clicking the link. Whenever you get spam emails, don't click on the links without verifying. Check it once, is this link contains JavaScript or not? Or some links will redirect to malicious websites or malware download links. Okay, thank you. See you in next lecture. Welcome back. In this video lecture, we will see injection attacks. What is injection attacks actually? Injection attacks refer to a broad class of attack vectors that allow an attacker to supply untrusted input to a program, which gets processed by an interpreter as a part of a command or query which alters the course of execution of that program. Injection attacks are amongst the oldest and most dangerous web application attacks. They can result in data theft, data loss, loss of data integrity, denial of service, as well as full system compromise. Injection is a major problem in web security. It is listed as the #1 web application security risk in the OWASP top 10 for good reason. What are injection attacks? Injection attacks are attacks in which we give something malicious input to a web application. Then we will see what kind of web application give us as a response. Injection attacks are performed both on client side and server side. The example of client side attacks are cross-site scripting, HTML injection, CSS injection, and so on. And the examples of server side injections are SQL injection, command injection, CRLF injection, and so on. Interactivity is required for this attack, which means in order to injection attack, user or attacker with web application or user interactivity with the database is required. Here is an input-output module. We give the input and receive the output. That's it in this lecture. Thank you and see you in next class. Welcome to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about directory path traversal attacks. So first, we look at what is a directory traversal attack. Okay, properly controlling access to web content is crucial for running a secure web server. Directory traversal or path traversal is an HTTP attack which allows attackers to access restricted directories and execute commands outside of the web server's root directory. So, web servers provide two main levels of security mechanisms like access control lists and root directory. First, we have to see access control list. An access control list is used in the authorization process. It is a list which the web server's administrator uses to indicate which users or groups are able to access, modify, or execute particular files on the server, as well as other access rights. Root directory. The root directory is a specific directory on the server file system in which users are confined. Users are not able to access anything above this root. That's it in this video lecture. We are continuing this in next lecture. Thank you. See you in next class. Welcome to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about directory path traversal attack. One example that how it will work. For this example, I am using webgoat.net taken from OWASP's Broken Web Application project. Let's open up webgoat. Ensure that Burp is correctly configured with your browser. In the Burp suite, my intercept is off now. Here you will see that webgoat web application. So our task is to try to find path traversal vulnerability right. In the beginning of the lecture, I have already told that the vulnerability arises because an attacker can place path traversal sequences into the file name to backtrack from current directory. The classic path traversal sequence is known as ... So visit the web page of the application that you are testing. Now click on Files available for downloads. Back to the Burp suite and click on Intercept is on. In the Proxy Intercept tab, now access the URL that includes the parameter you wish to test. So what I'm going to do is click on any of the download files link. Here is my proxy is blinking. The request will be captured in the proxy intercept tab. Here you will see that this request is get method request, URL, file name as a parameter. Right click anywhere on the request to bring up the context menu. Click on Send to repeater. Here we can input various payloads into the input field of a web application and monitor the response. Side by side, now click on the Go button in repeater to send the request to the server. You can observe that the response from the server in the repeater response panel. Continue to monitor the response as you utilize path traversal detection techniques. You will see over here content length is 65577. Now we can check whether our input is used in the field path or ignored. To perform this test, we can compare the response from the server when injecting / and / into the file name parameter. Let's inject / payload. Click on Go button. Here we can see that the response appears unchanged after inserting the / payload. Content length 65577. Now try with / payload. Click on Go. Here you will see over here that content length is changed. Working on the assumption that the parameter you are targeting is being appended to a present directory specified by the application. You can modify the parameter's value to insert an arbitrary subdirectory and single traversal sequence. If the application's response is identical to the initial response, it may be vulnerable. If you find any instances where the application may be vulnerable, the next test is to attempt to traverse out of the starting directory and access files from elsewhere on the server file system. You can access files is dependent on the server and web framework you are testing, like ASP.NET, PHP, JSP, and so on. WebGoat application is using an ASP.NET web framework. Web.config is the main settings and configuration file for an ASP.NET web application. Suppose if we are attacking a Tomcat application server, we might look for a web.xml file. Type /web.config. Hit Go button. Here you will see that web.config XML file. Using this vulnerability, you may be able to traverse out of the starting directory and access a known word reachable file on the operating system in question, // so on, /etc password for Linux OS, // so on, // Windows /win.ini for Windows OS. Let's try it over here. Here you can see that we have successfully accessed password file. Let's look at brief preventing directory traversal attacks. First of all, ensure you have installed the latest version of web server software and ensure that all patches have been applied. Ideally, remove everything but the noun good data and filter meta characters from the user input. This will ensure that only what should be entered in the field will be submitted to the server. In this video lecture, if you have any doubt on any instances, feel free to ask. Thanks for watching. See you in next lecture. Welcome back to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will discuss about cookies. So before going to see cookies, let's discuss about HTTP. HTTP is called as stateless protocol because each command is executed independently without any knowledge of commands that came before it. This is the main reason that it is difficult to implement websites that react intelligently to user input. HTTP protocol is a stateless protocol, which means you can open any website again and again. It will be treated as a new user. So you will be treated as a new user. each time. So we have to give our information again and again when we open any web page of that website. Because we are treated as a new user, that's why HTTP protocol is called as stateless protocol. Because we have to give our information every time we open any web page. Is it a bit boring, right? For that reason, we use two things, cookies and sessions. So with the help of cookies and sessions, we not have to give our information again and again. When we open a particular website, so cookies are a small files which contains information of user like passwords, username and etc. Cookies contain information in a text file. It's hardly of 4 KB in a size. Cookie is not an executable file and it's stored on a client side by a browser into user system, and sometimes the cookies are also stored for storing the user preferences. So cookies also contains some login information, authentication information, and even session IDs. Let's discuss about important fields of cookies, or you may say properties of cookies here. Here you can see that there are 5 important properties in cookies. First field is domain. So domain field tells which domain has this cookie. The path field will tell about which particular path of this cookie is set up, then secured. If the cookie is being sent through a secured medium by using HTTP protocol, then this field will be present inside our cookie. And then there is an expires field which tells when this cookie will expire. Here you can see that HTTP only. So the HTTP only field present inside the cookie, which means that cookie cannot be stolen by using JavaScript. So this was all about cookies. Now let's do an example with the cookies. Here I am using simple cookies creating PHP script. Save it as cookie.php. Now let's open this file in the browser. Here you can see that cookie is created in the browser. Let me show you that in which place our browser stores cookie. So just go to the settings, preferences, and then privacy. And here you will see the option to remove individual cookie. You can see the cookies of different websites. Let's remove all the cookies. And refresh the localhost. I hit enter. Here you can see in the response cookies inserted. Now let's verify. Click over here, remove individual cookies, and here you can see our cookie localhost 127.0.0.1. In this cookie, the name of the cookies, its value, see the host here and path also. Okay, that's all about cookies. Thanks for watching and see you in next lecture. Welcome back to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will see that what are session IDs. Sessions are server-side storage information which is present till a user is interacting with that web application. How that information is stored on that server, what kind of information it is. Information which is stored on a server till the user is interacting with that web application is in the form of session IDs. What are session IDs? Session ID is a piece of data that is used in network communications to identify a session, a series of latent message exchanges. Session identifiers become necessary in cases where the communications infrastructure uses a stateless protocol such as HTTP. Session ID is a long random alphanumeric string which uniquely identifies users on that website. Means every single user contains different session IDs, and how that session IDs are derived depend upon the web application logic. Sometimes what happens is the session IDs are also stored inside the cookies. The important characteristics of session IDs is, first one, session should be random, and the second one is session should be long and it should be alphanumeric. In the previous video we have learnt about cookies and sessions. So let's talk about difference between these session ID and cookies. Cookies is stored on client side by the browser and the sessions are stored on server sides. So in the cookie we can see the data which is inside the cookie in the form of name and value pairs, whereas the session IDs we can see our data so that the session IDs are secure, whereas the cookies are not secure and it can be stolen by the JavaScript technique. Let's see how to use Burp suite in order to find the session IDs. Let's open DVWA site. You can see that the request is HTTP request. Here you can see some different kind of cookies. You read this request here is an additional information called as PHP session ID. We can say that this is a session ID because it is PHP session ID. So this is how the session ID looks like: a long random string and alphanumeric string. In the most of application, if I talk about Google, Facebook or Twitter, etc., if you intercept the request, you will find lot of details containing these kind of different IDs. If there is written XYZ instead of PHP session ID, then you can just think of that how difficult it is to analyze that what our session IDs among these all of them. Finding a right PHP session ID or any other session IDs is also very tricky task. That's it in this video lecture. See you in the next class. Welcome. In this lecture, we will learn how to find vulnerability using cookies and sessions manipulation techniques. In this video lab demonstration, I have used OWASP broken vulnerable web application. My Burp suite already configured with the Burp with the browser. Now let's select bug as broken authentication and session management, then username, enumeration, and then login page. Here I already registered with John username profile. Type username as John and the password. Let's turn on my intercept proxy. Hit enter. Here you can see that in the proxy tab, post data parameters. Hit forward. Here you can see that cookies can be viewed in the cookies header. Username as John, user ID as 26, and so on. Now we can try to find vulnerability in each individual cookie one by one. For this cookie vulnerability investigation, I will use repeater tool. So let's send this request to repeater. Here you can see that repeater tool is blinking. Open up repeater tab. The cookie in the request can be edited easily in the params tab. First investigate with the same request. Here I am not editing or modifying any cookies. Go to button. Here you can see that in the response, logged in user is John. Now let's change username and analyze that is vulnerability presented in the username cookie. Let's modify username cookies value. Hit go button. You see that in the username tab, logged in user as same. Let's try to modify with UID cookies. Hit go button. Here you can see that logged in user has changed. This means that this web application is vulnerable for cookie session. We have logged in to the web application as Bryce. Logged in user as admin. We have used the cookies to manipulate the session and access another account. Okay, that's it in this video lecture.